Hans Keirstead. I've been a professor of neuroscience for 15 years at the University of California at Irvine, so I was asked to chair this session on aging and the brain, how we should be paying attention to aging, and any AI interventions in brain aging that might be pertinent today. So before doing that, I thought that I'd actually let each of the speakers introduce themselves and just give you an idea of what they do. So Raj.
All right, I'll start. Sorry, we were supposed to go on before Andrew Steele, so now I feel like I need to up my game a little bit. So I'm Rajiv Ahuja. I'm with an organization called the Milken Institute, which is a global think tank that brings together global thought leaders to advance solutions in financial, physical, mental, and environmental health. And within the Milken Institute, I work in our Center for the Future of Aging, where I focus predominantly on Alzheimer's and dementia care, and really trying to evolve the health and long-term care systems in the US and abroad for people living with Alzheimer's disease. And so, with that narrow focus in Alzheimer's, which is attracting a lot of funding, like Andrew said, which is starting to see a lot of momentum with our understanding of kind of underlying biology of brain health, we started expanding our scope of the work that we do and the advocacy that we do, and seeing that age is a significant risk factor for poor brain health. We started to look beyond age also. I think today, one of the people asked, why are we looking at aging today? I think one of the reasons we're focused on brain health today is just the sheer amount of stressors that are taking place around the world. We have climate change and weather extremes and mass amounts of misinformation and political tensions and food industry that's affecting our brain. And so we need to take a broader look at how we are caring for our brains. And so one of the things that we're doing right now is putting forth a vision for a broader ecosystem to look at brain health, and advancing the concept of brain capital, which many of you might know about. There's significant momentum to really place brain health at the center of economic activity, health activity, national GDP, global economic resilience, and really kind of focus on the ways that all aspects of brain health, from an individual level to a state level to a global level, can all kind of look at ways of enhancing brain health to translate that to kind of economic success within financial systems, improved workforce productivity, as well as social policies also. So that concept of brain capital, which really emphasizes core concepts of brain health, which include cognitive, sensory, behavioral, emotional aspects of brain functioning, are really going to be critical kind of moving forward as we see a lot of the automation that's going on right now with AI. We've talked a lot about that. It's really kind of driving forward a brain economy, like we like to say, in terms of trying to advance critical thinking, at a younger level. Folks are at a younger level are being subjected to even more stressors. We're seeing higher levels of anxiety, depression, mental health issues among the younger population, which will impact kind of workforce productivity later on. And so I think brain capital from the brain health perspective, but also from the brain skills perspective, is really going to kind of drive tremendous amounts of economic activity. And I'll kind of stop there as an introduction, but just say that there's been so many numbers put forth in terms of what the economic activity or cost of brain health is, and it's upwards of $6 trillion if you put together reduced workforce, healthcare costs, lower workforce productivity, lower innovation. So it's really impacting, I think, or attracting attention from very high levels of governments as well. So,
Thank you. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Emil. I'm a doctor by training and I worked all my first part of my career in cancer research. Since then, I did a bit of a detour running tech companies, but sold my last two in 2020 and 2021. Because everything I've been doing is working on longevity, right? I studied medicine to go into longevity. And then, to be fair, the tech companies were a bit of a detour because I didn't really feel like there's any high impact stuff when I started them. When I say high impact stuff, living healthy, taking supplements and all of that is great and even important, right? But it's not going to give you another 20 years. It's not going to give you another 50 years, another whatever, how many years, right? So you said it before, escape velocity, right? Living, basically enabling people to live how long they would like to live, right? In my mind, this should be clearly a choice for everybody should say. Even if they're 85, if someone says I want to do another 80 years, that should be their choice. Because medically that's not possible. So in 2018, I talked to my last board and said, listen, I'm going to go back to build a longevity company, and one that is very much on the moonshot side of things, right? So like all my investors are all ultra high net worth individuals. We don't have any funds because what we do is like the mandate is not there. It's like a too long of a horizon usually for the investment thesis and the fund generations. So I set up a non-profit research foundation in Switzerland that does basic science, and a biotech tech company in Germany that works on what you might know from science fiction movies, cryopreservation. When you go to another star, you go into one of these capsules, the cold temperature starts or whatever, the smoke comes out, and then people wake up 20, 30, 40 years later, whatever the movie requires, without having aged during that time frame. So we're working on doing that in reality. While you can do that in cells, you can do that in certain very small animals, worms in the lab. You cannot yet do that in humans, of course. And this might take 10 years, this might take 20 years, this might take 30 years, it might take longer. But if I'm getting cancer tomorrow, and my choice is between cremation or burial, because let's be honest, these are our choices, right? As a doctor, unfortunately, you also see 40-year-olds get cancer. It's not super likely statistically, but it happens. So if my choice is between cremation or burial, or cryopreservation, I want to make damn sure that there's good cryopreservation. So, and if I'm wrong, I'm happily wrong. Then I just take the pill, do the treatment, or whatever is there, 40, 50, whatever years. But if I'm right, then I think it's very, very important that we start working on high impact stuff. Otherwise, we're going to be 85 at some point, and the doctors are going to tell us, we can take the pain away, but that's going to be it.
Thank you. So you can see that we've got experts on the panel about how to keep your brain healthy while you're alive, and cryopreserved.
Keep it running.
Keep it running. So, what happens during the course of aging in the brain? Just very quickly, it's, your cognitive decline increases. Almost all of us, 100% of humans eventually get some form of cognitive decline. We have the accumulation of byproducts and metabolism accumulate in our brain. So we get a little bit of extra garbage up there. It's an immunostimulant. 100% of us get neuroinflammation with age. So you get a chronic state of a bit of an angry, untargeted, or mistargeted immune system with age. Every single one of us. And you also get a disinhibition of your frontal lobe. Frontal lobe being that chunk of your brain that was evolved most recently, is very, very different and kind of diametrically opposed to your reptilian brain, or your brain stem, where that says fight, flee, or mate. Your frontal lobe is inhibiting that by saying, wait a minute, I think if I talk to her longer, she might actually want to talk to me. And, I think maybe I will not fight this individual because I'm upset. And it's an inhibition function that goes away with age. 100% of us have disinhibition of our frontal lobe. And so, with all of that, that's, very quick 1 minute on how your brain ages. Perhaps I'll ask the question of, what are we trying to fix with longevity treatments or maintain with cryopreservation, and why now?
So I can start with that. I think, interestingly, with a focus in the Alzheimer's space, they say that symptoms arise, or there's the start of symptoms 20 years before a diagnosis of something like Alzheimer's or related dementias. So it makes your midlife very, very critical. And unfortunately, midlife is the time when most of us, don't pay attention to exercising as much as we should, eating well, having those social engagements. Our jobs kind of take over our life. But that midlife period is so critically important to focus on, I think, so that we can take advantage of things like longevity, escape velocity, when treatments do come. So I think, one of the things that we do is really look to see where, not only along the healthcare continuum, but where, in the community we can better support the adoption of healthy behavior, specifically within kind of early to midlife periods of time. And, we've worked with Dan Buettner also with Blue Zones and trying to set up the concept of longevity cities so that, the infrastructure around you nudges you towards those types of behaviors so that we're not constantly under extra stress to go to the gym every day. We can kind of have environments that are conducive to that. But just to kind of say why we're doing that now, demographic shifts across the world are showing, certain countries aging faster than others. And there is going to be a very, very big competitive advantage for countries that have an aging dividend, a younger population. Places in Africa where the median age is 19, in India, which has a younger population, places throughout the Middle East, as opposed to some of the super Asian countries, in the Far East, who are experiencing a decline in their productive workforce and are looking for any means to extract more productivity out of their existing workforce. And I think that comes down to brain health, and I think that's the flag, if you will, for all other conditions of our body. It's an indication of so many different age-related diseases. And so those countries that prioritize interventions that activate brain health or amplify brain health, I think we're going to have a big competitive advantage in the market. And I would just say, we do an event in Singapore every year. It's our Asia Summit. And one by one, prime ministers from Malaysia, Vietnam, were getting up in front of investors talking about their biggest asset being their human capital. And I think what they really meant is kind of this brain capital aspect of their workforce that they want folks to invest in. And I think that kind of moving forward, all the solutions that are targeted to that are going to be elevated beyond individual health up to kind of a global scale.
Don't get me wrong, I would love for all the longevity stuff to work, right? It's the much better product, right? But we need to be realistic, at least a bit, right? Longevity research has been going on for a while. We've not increased the maximum human lifespan by anything. So exactly, we can do great work in mice, but all my cancer research stuff always worked great in mice. And of course, if you're coming from cancer research, right? Cancer research has been telling us every 10 years it's another 10 years. Right? In 2005, it was the director's challenge of the NCI, National Cancer Institute, that said we want to get cure cancer in 10 years. Not make better, cure. That would have been 2015. Of course, we're far away from that. Biology is really, really hard. And of course, since there's investors in the room, right? If the downside is really, really bad, I would argue dying is really, really big downside, right? You should hedge. I'm not saying everybody should now switch over to do cryopreservation tomorrow, right? We need longevity stuff to work once cryopreservation works, right? Because you want to live on in the future once you come back, right? But the point being, of course, the investment amounts in cryopreservation currently, it's like the early stages of the internet. It's joke amounts. It's whatever, double-digit millions a year, right? So I'm saying, basically, I'm advocating for we should start hedging. And of course, depending on how old you are individually, you might want to hedge more or less, right? Because the 85-year-olds, they're not going to be around when longevity tech is going to work. Maybe the 40-year-olds have a chance, maybe not. I'm not 40 yet, and I'm already working on cryopreservation. And I'm willing to take any bet if someone says I'm wrong.
Thank you. I can go on all day with questions, but love to take some questions from the audience if you have any in the last couple of minutes. Okay, I'll ask one while you're thinking. So for each of you respectively in cryopreservation and your global view, Raj, what is the status of your sector in brain health? So what's the status, for example, Raj, in what treatments are available, not, are they behavioral, are they drug, are they coalition, are they still individual? And what's the status of cryopreservation of the brain? Can you thaw and unthaw at the same rate as the other organs, like a bone that's more dense, etc.? So you can talk about the status of the brain sector, please.
So you can cryopreserve yourself today, right? Again, if I'm getting cancer tomorrow, I'm going to do that. You can show that as much as we understand the important parts of what makes me and makes you are still around. You can do electron microscopy, right? You can see the cells are still there. You can show that the axons and the synapses are still connected, and so on and so on. Right? If there is anything metaphysical of the brain, then of course I can't prove that, right? And probably no one will ever. But assuming there isn't, and of course as a scientific background I operate under the assumption there isn't, where I operate on the assumption if your brain is still around, the structure of your brain, then at least arguably it might be revivable. Just like in the past, where before the 1960s, if someone's heart stopped, we didn't do CPR. CPR was invented in the 1960s, which would be medical malpractice, right? So it's arguably possible that in the future something that is considered irrecoverable death right now might be recoverable, right? So you can show a good amount of things that they work. You can cryopreserve organs, you can bring them back, you can transplant them back into an animal, they work. You can cryopreserve certain animals, they keep their memories. I mean, it's a worm, but they still have some memories. So you can prove the individual parts, but you cannot bring back a human. And honestly, I think this will take decades and decades until this works. But again, the alternative is cremation or burial. So what do you really have to lose?
So I'll just conclude by saying that I think there's tremendous progress going on in therapeutics being developed for neurodiseases. The National Institute of Alzheimer's is starting to produce a lot of evidence that's being translated into Alzheimer's therapeutics, for example. But I think we're at a stage in the brain health industry where we need to elevate, the role of brain health. We need to put it up on par with measures like GDP, with funding equal to basic infrastructure like roads and bridges, and really kind of put the same amount of funding, investment, and innovation into brain health. And I think around the world, countries are doing that. And I think if you want to look at an example, look at space tech for example. Space tech has grown from kind of a niche area, developing satellites and trips to the moon, to an entire industry, an entire ecosystem with a market size of over $1 trillion. And I think green tech is another example where it's not just the technology that's being developed, it's the workforce, it's the funding mechanisms, it's all of the index track funds, it's the entire ecosystem that's being developed around it. And I think brain capital is in that position now to start kind of elevating it to those levels.
Thank you so much. Very interesting, gents, and please join me in thanking